This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
And we're back on the Alice Stewart Show, 7:36 on a nice Friday morning. Hope everyone has some fun plans for the weekend. And with the midterm elections 60 days away, there's a lot campaigns in high gear, candidates moving their way across the state, but also the voter ID law is now being called into question. And as many are aware, the state legislators passed a voter ID law during the last legislative session, which would require voters to present an ID. In the past, poll workers were required to ask you for your ID, and you did not have to produce it. Now, state law indicates you do. There's been some legal questions as to the constitutionality of this law. Here to talk about that, I'm joined with Secretary of State Mark Martin. Secretary Martin, good morning.
Good morning, Alice. How are you doing?
I'm great. I appreciate it. First off, if you can, Secretary of State, and you oversee elections in the state, what was the purpose or the driving force behind this voter ID law to begin with?
Well, of course, the voter ID law is it's a creature. It's created by the legislature, so we as the executive office just put in the law into place. Now, I want to be perfectly clear. I support the law, and we're going to do everything we can to defend it and defend the legislature against the lawsuits. And so
the latest with that is that there's a circuit judge barring the enforcement of the voter ID law should be upheld, and a stay should be lifted. And this is according to attorneys for this lawsuit. Explain what's the current status now of the voter ID law and those arguing that this law is unconstitutional.
Well, it's beginning to hear the arguments and stuff for that. And I really want to try to avoid getting into specifics of the lawsuit and the law itself, because we've got an ongoing legal matter. It's probably a better idea to kind of stay away from that stuff. I'd probably rather talk more about the law. And, you asked why, what was the motivation for doing that? And it's to actually make a more secure election. One of the things that's really important is people have confidence in elections, that there's not a fraud going on. And this voter ID law was one way to make sure of that and give people some additional confidence in elections. We already have declining participation in elections, where voter turnout for that actually participate in elections is pretty low. And measures like this give people more confidence in the election, maybe restore some of their confidence that their vote counts. So I'm sure that's the motivation for the legislature in passing this.
Right. And when the legislature passed this, there was certainly some arguments on both sides of this. And Governor Beebe attempted to veto the law, and it was overridden by legislators. And then a lawsuit was filed on this. And you have indicated you are named as the defendant in this voter lawsuit with regard to voter ID, and you have argued in court that the plaintiffs lack standing to challenge the law because they haven't shown how anyone has been harmed by that. Why is it important to make sure that they have been able to show that there has been some harm?
Well, like I said, I really kind of want to avoid the specifics of the legal case there. One of the things that's kind of interesting about the voter IDs around the country is that even after they get in place, and the states actually some states have spent millions of dollars to actually put a voter ID system in place. Arkansas, we spent less than $300,000 to put it in place, and most of that has been advertising to make people, inform people about the voter ID law. So I think that one of the things that when you're talking about this sort of thing is you see that there's just not a tremendous amount of people it's a very, very small amount of people that actually need to have an ID provided to them.
And understanding the legal argument and battle is underway. I want to just explain some of the folks that are fighting the voter ID law. NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, and several other activist organizations have offered up a separate amicus brief saying that the Act 595, they say, quote, disproportionately disenfranchises Black and vulnerable Arkansas voters. And they say that this is inappropriate in terms of voting rights for people of Arkansas. Pulaski County Circuit Clerk Larry Crane also offered an amicus brief arguing that, in essence, the law unconstitutionally requires lawfully registered Arkansas voters to, quote, requalify themselves each time they vote in an election in the state. Without addressing the legal battle that is going on, Secretary, what is the process for folks to go through in order to get their ID? I know there was concern about this would disenfranchise voters, or it would put an undue cost or burden on them in order to go get one. What is the process that folks go through to get a voter ID at this point?
Well, so far, I mean, there's barely anybody that's had to go through the process. Something like 20, maybe between 20 and 100 so far in the state. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but just based on speaking to county clerks and stuff, you got one or two issued here and there in some counties, and some counties none. So there's not a whole lot of people that's even had to go through the process. One of the reasons is because the legislature did a wonderful job of actually providing legal justification for all kinds of IDs that are out there. I mean, the poll workers will accept a wide range of IDs already. So that's one part of it that the legislature did, and they did very well. And then the process is just a matter of actually visiting your county clerk. You go in, you fill out a form, and they issue you a free ID right there on the spot.
And that's the question. My guest, Secretary of State Mark Martin, we are talking about the new challenge on the voter ID law that the ACLU deems unconstitutional, and the question of folks have said this has placed an undue cost and burden on voters, and this is there's no cost.
There's no cost.
Explain exactly where do people go, and the fact that what's the process? They go and it's not a big deal. They go to the county clerk's office, and they actually fill out a form, and the form is just providing basic information, and it swears that they don't have any other form of identification. Once they've done that, I think that form wouldn't take hardly any time to fill out. Once they've done that, then the county clerk actually puts them down and takes their picture and creates the ID right there, the voter ID right there at that point. And there again, voters have to make sure that voters understand you don't have to have that ID. You can have almost any ID will work that's issued by a government agency. Right. And a lot of folks have an ID for driving, and you need IDs for so many things, whether you're getting on a plane or you're buying beer or buying cigarettes. Folks have IDs, and any of those types of IDs would be sufficient.
Yes.
Secretary, I want to ask you this. With this legal challenge going on in the courts and questions of this being unconstitutional, what kind of impact, or will it have an impact on November, or is this something that a legal fight will last far after that, or is there any way to know?
You know what? One of the things that I am not is a lawyer, and there's a good reason for that. I never can predict what the courts will do or how they'll go about doing it. So guessing that is I'm always surprised.
All right. Well, Secretary of State Mark Martin, we appreciate you and your insight on the voter ID law. Secretary Martin, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
All right, we will take a break, and we will have more on the Alice Stewart Show right after this segment of the program, brought to you by Arrow Plumbing. For all of your household or business plumbing needs, call Arrow Plumbing, 1-866-PLUMBER, or schedule an appointment online at arrowplumbing.net.